I'm the moderator of today's session, Smart Mortgages, with some real experts that we're very fortunate to have this morning. I would like to introduce Dipesh Shah, who's a mortgage and protection advisor at Just Mortgages, Dina Budia, who is an independent financial advisor and works at the P2M group, P2M Asset Management and P2M Properties. So she comes today wearing lots of different hats. We have Yogesh Nagbal, who is the Director and Protection Insurance Specialist at Aegis Life Financial Services, and Bob Singh, who is a mortgage advisor and estate planner at Chess Mortgages. Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for being here, joining us at the Great Big Indian Money Show, discussing smart mortgages. So the way it's going to work, guys, is we're going to ask a few questions, and feel free to give your thoughts. It's such an important topic, isn't it, about mortgages? And I think the first question is the stamp duty holiday. And, we've noticed more and more people looking to purchase properties. And I think the question is, what should people be thinking about when taking out a mortgage? Particularly those that are first-time buyers and also those that are more experienced. Dipesh Shah, would you like to kick us off on this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's great to be here. So thank you very much for the invitation. When it comes to the stamp duty holidays at the moment, what we seem to be finding is a lot of people are looking to transact as fast as they possibly can, which is understandable with the savings that people can make. I think when you are looking to purchase, especially now, to beat the deadline, I suppose, it's to make sure that all the different parties that come together when it comes to arranging the mortgage finance and completing the transaction are working in synergy with one another. So not only the mortgage broker will work with the lenders, but also making sure the estate agents and the legal team, so the solicitors, are working together to make sure that we meet that deadline. And then, if we can't do by the end of June, then, there is that tapered effect, which will come down at the end of September. It is. So that's what I would say right now. But there are savings to be made, and there's different types of purchases that can take place.
Okay, thank you. And you've talked about that aspect of it. And Bob, if I could just bring you in, because I know you assist and advise many people with mortgages. What sort of documents would somebody require to present to their broker or to a lender in order to really maximize their chances to get themselves a mortgage?
Yeah, I think preparation is the key to a successful application. What lenders have to do these days is check affordability. So the only way they can do that is if we present them with three months payslips, a good credit file, a good level of deposit. So in terms of documents, obviously we have to identify the client for money laundering purposes, check their ID, bank statements to see how they conduct their account, because even the best of clients can get declined if you're breaching your overdraft limits or having bounced items on there, or having, for example, payday loans or gambling entries on your statement. So you've got to be very careful. So having an agreement in principle is the best way to be ready for that mortgage application.
Thank you.
That can take one day at best. Yeah, no more than
And maybe Dina, if I can bring you in here. I mean, one thing Bob has said is, your credit rating is quite important. If I were watching this and I was concerned about my credit rating, does that stop me from getting out a mortgage, or is there anything that can be done?
Great question, Pranav. Yeah, I think, traditionally people feel that if they have had any form of adverse credit or missed payments, commonly mobile phone bills are big culprits, they feel that they can't get onto their property ladder and can't get a mortgage. That is a myth. Everything is possible. It's just a matter of knowing how to move forward. There is specialist lenders out there that do open their doors for people who have had missed payments, But again, I think, as Bob mentioned, the credit scoring, it's always healthy to have an MOT every year to do your credit score and ensure that, there might be some hidden surprises that you can actually manage before you go into the world of mortgages. So, answer to your question, Pranav, if you have any form of missed payments, adverse, even county court judgments, there is specialist lenders that can help you. You may be paying an enhanced interest rate, but you can still get yourself on the property ladder.
Thank you, Tina. That's really, really helpful. Yogesh, if I may bring you in on this topic, I mean, we've got 3 people that deal day in, day out with mortgages, but I know you bring a different perspective on things, and that's more from a protection perspective. So if I were to be thinking about taking out a mortgage, what protections, by way of insurance or otherwise, should I be thinking about right now?
Thank you, Pranav. Great question, and thank you for having me on the show as well. The topic of the show is smart mortgages, and one of the things that makes the mortgages smart, the key foundation, is protection. Protection is the cornerstone of every financial planning, every debt that we take. Now, in order to make the mortgage really smart and protecting all elements, the key thing that people need to concentrate on is the debt itself. So if you're taking on a debt, make sure you have enough budget, and when you're planning for the budget as well, make sure that you assign enough amount to take care of the protection element, which is things like protecting your income. Very, very key and important. There's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of advertisement, the comparison side focus purely on the debt side of things. But we've seen in the last year that a lot of people have lost their jobs or haven't been able to earn a living because of their income. So look at all elements and take advice from a professional to make sure your individual circumstances are protected and not just the mortgage. Look at a wholesome picture.
Thank you, Yogesh. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Now, this wouldn't be the great big Indian money show if we didn't talk about investment property. And we know many of the people watching this may have properties on a buy-to-let basis or HMOs, or you may even have people looking at investing in some of these new builds that we have. So Dipesh, if I may bring you in, what is the relationship between mortgages and new builds? Is it possible to take out a mortgage with a new build, or is that not the case?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there is a lot of incentives and a lot of initiatives from the government, to purchase new build properties. From our perspective in sort of the mortgage world, when you're buying a property off plan, ultimately it's going to come down to the bank's valuation that they put on that particular property. And, with the tragic events of things like Grenfell Tower, what we're finding nowadays is, particularly on flats and high-rise buildings, is the fire safety reports, which have to be produced, something called the EWS1 form. And a lot of lenders at the moment are asking at point of valuation to see sight of these reports to make sure that the building is actually safe. So if you are going down the route of purchasing a new build property, it's just making sure all the legal aspects and they've dotted the I's and crossed the T's, so on and so forth, to make sure that it is safe and sound. And absolutely, there's nothing wrong with buying something off plan. It's just making sure that everything's lined up, all the ducks are lined up in a row to make sure you're able to complete it properly.
That's really helpful. And moving on from new builds, when we talk about HMOs, Dina, if I may bring you in here, if I were to be a landlord looking to maybe purchase a HMO, what is it that I need to be thinking about? Is it just the mortgage and the amount of borrowing and paying back, or is there more I should be thinking about?
There's a lot more, actually, Pranav. Most landlords, or especially first-time landlords who are looking to go into the HMO space, they just feel that they need to get a buy-to-let mortgage, and then they can rent it to whomever they wish and however they wish. Now, that is not the case. I think, the key thing is the mortgage application, the mortgage terms that you actually get offered are in line with exactly what you're going to do and whom you are going to rent with. Key things as part of pre-planning for HMO is, does your council require licenses? Does the property require a license? How many people are actually going to reside in there? And also, as a landlord, you have, the health and safety aspect of, does it have an electric certificate? Does it have a gas certificate? there's extra measures put in with like electricity blankets that need to be in with HMO. So these are key things that you need to do a lot of pre-conversations with the professional, also with the council, the borough. There's a lot of selective licensing going on with certain authorities. So it's not a blanket approach. It's all about where are you, the location, the council, and where you're looking to purchase. And then the actual lenders are traditionally not the high street lenders lend. You know, the high street lenders tend to stay safe with the first-time buyers and the home movers. It's actually the specialist lenders. So it is very important that you do seek independent mortgage advice and go to the professionals who have, you know, the specialist areas that they can contact and you know, guide you accordingly.
Yes, and you make reference to these types of licensing, for example, a selective license. If I don't have a clue what a license is or what it means, how do I get more information about the type of license I need and what it means and things like that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's two sides. One, the estate agents or the legal due diligence, the solicitor would have this information. Secondly, your local borough council, they do have the housing departments where you know, you'd have selective licensing. There is a cost for that, Pranav, so you need to factor these things in, and these costs could be, you know, every year, or they could be every 5 years. So investors generally look at, you know, the rental income and the cost of borrowing, and, you know, an insurance policy. They don't necessarily take into account the licensing and the annual licensing, which can, you know, make a big difference to your rental yield, as you know, as investors, you know, look at really.
And thank you. And that's such a great piece of advice. And rental yield is so important. And, you know, many Indians watching this are always keeping an eye on their bottom line, particularly when they are investing in property. And Bob, actually, this is where I'd like to bring you in, because I know one of the big questions people ask you when they ask you for advice is, you know, should I be thinking about an interest-only mortgage, or, you know, should I be looking at paying off my interest and capital at the same time? What's your view on this? And you know, what advice do you have for investors about what type of mortgage they should be taking out and their repayment plan?
Yeah, good question. It's what every customer asks us: should they go repayment or should they go interest only? My advice is always that on investment properties, it should always be interest only. But some people are quite averse to debt. They like, for the debt to be paid off over the next 15, 20 years. And that's fine, because everyone is different. So we can only advise. The ultimate choice still rests, with the customer. The good thing about having an interest-only mortgage is you can offset the interest against the rental income. Or especially in the case of a limited company buy-to-let. On a personal level, you don't get any relief. You just get a 20% tax credit against the interest charged. So if you pay off your debt, you'll have nothing to offset against your income. Because for personal buy-to-lets, the 10% wear and tear has been taken away. So that's why higher rate taxpayers are now veering towards the limited company route to be able to claim all the interest back, all the charges, and if you can't claim any interest back, your taxable amount every year will increase. So for that reason only, I would say interest only is best, because it's not your main home. If in 25, 30 years you have to sell it, big deal, so what? If it was your main home, then yes, repayment is always better, because you don't want to be selling your house to downsize when you don't want to when you're 65 or 70 years old.
Yes, no, that's really helpful. And, you touched on, when you're 65 and 70 years old, and actually that leads us nicely on to talking about, how do you plan for, end of life, and, what can people in their 50s, 60s or 70s or even younger be thinking about? And Yogesh, if I could just bring you in here. I know you advise lots of people about what happens, end of life, and it is a bit of a morbid topic, but actually, over the past year, we've seen how important it is to talk about it. So with your clients, if the viewers are watching this and they're thinking, we haven't really made any provision for what happens after we pass away, what would you suggest to them? What can they do to really best protect themselves after life?
So one of the things that I've come across in typical clientele is a lot of Asian population or Indian population have built up their estate or built up their assets over a lifetime. They really haven't got a lot of diversified investments like pensions or other investment sources, and property is their only asset base that they've built up. They live their lifestyle on rental and rental income, and it's come to a stage or health that they want to pass it to the next generation, which is where Bob can also contribute in there with estate planning, or Dina can probably contribute in here as well. But it depends on individual circumstances and what they want to leave and how they see their estate overall. There are insurance products available or insurance solutions available to cover or make provisions for the inheritance tax liability on the estate, which is very, very common. I think it was an awkward subject to talk upon till now. It's difficult to speak as a family in terms of death, what will happen, and the conversations between parents and children, it's not very smooth when you talk about what will happen when the parents pass away. But what I've seen, especially in the onset of the pandemic, these sort of conversations have now become more common, more open. People are accepting the fact that things are happening. People are passing away within their community, within their friend circle, and planning needs to be made into place. There are other solutions for estate planning as well, like trusts, investment options, etc. But a lot of people are looking at life insurance as a simple solution to make provisions for the liability after death, so that the next generation or their bloodline doesn't need to worry about the tax man or making provisions for the inheritance tax liability.
Excellent. No, that's really good advice. We have about 5 minutes left, so I want to do a quick fire round where, the topic is smart mortgages, and I would really like to hear from all of you, maybe your golden nugget of advice to the viewers watching this today, as to, from the experts, from you, what your golden nugget of advice would be to anybody wanting to ensure that they are being as smart as possible with their mortgage. So if we start with Dipesh, and sorry to put you on the spot here, but something we haven't if there's something we haven't touched on, what would your golden nugget of advice be for people looking at getting a mortgage?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the first things I tell my first-time buyers is, this is a very emotive journey that you're about to go on, and one thing that we want to do is make sure that it's as stress-free as possible. So number one is just to enjoy it, trust the experts that you're working with, and just be prepared, and don't worry about the rest. We will take care of that with you. And for me, if I can take the stress out, and the day they get the keys is probably the best day for every mortgage advisor out there. So just enjoy it is what I would say, but work with us. We're happy to work with you.
Perfect, thank you. And Dina, what would your golden nugget be for your viewers?
I think just to add on to Dipesh without repeating is more so for the investors. I think traditionally when they've done things historically, lending has become very easy and less bureaucratic. We're in the world of paperwork. We're in the world of digitalization. I think investors, first-time buyers, home movers, they should always seek advice pre-active rather than post. Because then you eliminate a lot of the headaches, as Dipesh mentioned. So speak to the professionals, whether it be the lawyer, the accountant, because you do need to look to seek tax advice maybe, and the mortgage advisors prior to taking on that journey, Pranav.
Yeah, and I think being proactive is definitely a great piece of advice. Bob, if I bring you in here, what would you advise as a golden piece of advice?
I would say form a very close relationship with your mortgage advisor, because that is the person that's going to guide you, answer all the questions. They're going to be your sort of doormat, if you like, for everybody else to have a go at, because they can cover your back, make sure the mortgage is the right one, make sure your protection is in place, and help you along that journey, because this is a long road. It's a 15-25 year contract with a mortgage, so you need somebody that you can go back to again and again, or pick up the phone out of hours, which is what banks can't do for you, and get that advice, get that that comforting voice at the other end of the line, and say, look, that's fine, we'll look after it, don't worry about it, you've done the right things. So I think it's forming a close relationship, and don't be afraid to pay advice for the broker. We are professionals, we have been doing this for decades, so we know the business inside out. So, and Dina said, trust the advice that your professionals give you, because cheapest isn't the best. And a lot of people don't even know half the features in the mortgage contract. They don't even read the offer letter. So we say, know what you're taking out, know why you've taken it out, and don't forget the protection.
Excellent. Yeah, some sound advice there. And Yogesh, you know, from either a mortgage perspective or a protection insurance perspective, what would you give as a piece of advice?
So following on from Bob's last comment, don't forget the protection. My advice would be cover all bases. Make sure if you're buying a house, you have enough protection in place that if things don't go to plan, all aspects are protected in there. And if you have taken protection many years ago, make sure you review it. Is it still fit for purpose? Is what you did a few years ago was sufficient then, but is it still sufficient? Has your life changed since then? Have you added to your family? Have you added to the borrowing? So make sure when you're doing your mortgage review, also do your protection review and make sure it's fit for purpose. And finally, if you have any policies in place, make sure that it's in trust. So it gets to the right people in the right hands in the quickest possible time and avoids any complexities. So those will be my golden pieces of advice.
Your golden nuggets. Thank you. So, you know, to summarize, being proactive, cheapest isn't always the best, reading the small print and making sure you've covered all the bases, I think sums up the advice from all four of you. And, you know, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time and imparting such useful knowledge. Thank you very much for joining us today on Smart Mortgages. I'm sure you would agree with me. The panel have been fantastic and they've really imparted some great advice. Hope to see you at some of the other sessions that we will be having on the Great Big Indian Money Show. But for now, thank you for watching and have a very, very good day.